Today is January 30th, 2021. My name is Kevin, and this is the Punk and Metal project of the Houston Asian American Archive. Today, I'll be talking with Nikki Bigalbo, the lead singer and guitarist of Gone Rogue, a punk band based in Houston. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Kevin.
So before we dive into, punk music and your band experiences, can you first tell us a little bit about some of your early musical experiences and upbringing? Were you kind of part of a musical household?
I come kind of from a musical family, but not really a rock and roll family. So one of my uncles actually is a kind of famous singer in the Philippines. So everyone sings, everyone plays guitar, but it wasn't the type of music that I liked. So, I was more into the heavier music. I liked punk rock. Um, and one of my really first idols, or one of the first people I idolized that made me want to play music was Joan Jett. So, I found her music when I was about 12, 13, and I thought she was just badass. Like she played guitar, she was this tough girl, and I totally wanted to be her. And so I got my first electric guitar on my 13th birthday, actually. Yeah.
So when you got your guitar, how did you start learning how to play it? Did you have a teacher or self-taught?
So I didn't. So, YouTube wasn't really a thing back there. Like nowadays, you can learn everything on the internet. I literally would listen to a song and I would just find the notes and play it. So, and then I had a guitar book that came with the guitar I got. So I was learning notes that way, but I really taught myself just by listening to music by ear.
And you mentioned that teaching yourself that by ear. So as time has gone on, how have you kind of further developed your skill? Did you eventually go on to kind of get a teacher or
I wish I did. So I will say this, I love playing guitar. I love playing music. I'm not the greatest guitarist. And I will be honest, like I can't do crazy riffs. I can't do all those crazy leads, but kind of like Joan Jett, she plays rhythm and rhythm's really, important in music, just holding that rhythm. And so that's really what I do mostly. I do a few simple leads, but I just play what I like. I just play the kind of music I like and I enjoy.
awesome? And eventually at 12 to 13,
Mhm.
is that also kind of the age when you started trying to make your own music or
It
tell us
was.
about your first like band experience, I guess.
Okay, so yeah, so that was around the age I started writing my own songs. And I actually had a sister and cousin that were kind of into this, they were into the same kind of music. We were all about the same age. So we started a band together. The three of us started a band together, a punk band, and we had our own songs. We did some covers, played a few local shows. So I think the first show that I actually played, my first live show, I was 15 and I was playing I forgot to mention, but I played drums too. I was playing drums and guitar back and forth. And so we would play small venues around town. That was my first band experience about I think I was 15.
And as a kid, why did punk music kind of resonate with you initially? And what did the genre offer that I guess other musical genres didn't?
Really good question. And I know it's going to sound cheesy, but when I found punk rock, I swear I felt like I found who I was. I was a very shy kid, very troubled child. I dealt with depression. I was very shy in school. I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't know who I was. And when I found that music, I don't know, it just resonated with me. The lyrics, the style, everything about it, I just felt like I found who I was supposed to be. And it really did help me, I think, come out of my shell. Honestly, like I said, I was very, very shy. Um, and punk rock, the way you dress is very loud, so you get attention. People look at you like you're crazy, and for some reason, I loved it. I had the crazy hair. I wore like all the belts and the patches, and I don't know. It was just who I was. It was who I was supposed to be.
What were your parents, I guess, perspective or attitude toward that interest?
Oh my gosh. So my mother, God bless her, I love her to death and I don't blame her now, but she hated it. I mean, she swore that I was possessed. She called it devil music. She would pray over me. She had my uncle come over and pray over me. They put me like in counseling. Like they really thought that it was just the most horrible thing. And I could see why from a parent's, eyes, because it was a lot of it was, the songs were violent or the songs were, they would say terrible things and it was all about rebelling and anarchy and all that stuff. My mom was not about it. My dad, even though he was pretty strict, I think he thought it was more funny than anything. He would just make fun of the way I dressed. He thought it was hilarious. He would poke fun at me. But he was good about letting us be who we were. My dad never really tried to tell me not to be that way, but my mom was not happy. She hated it.
As time went on, did she kind of revise her views or express like more acceptance toward your interests?
No. Unfortunately, no. And if she ever sees this, no hard feelings. I love her to death. But to this day, we just don't talk about that part of my life. There was a time when I actually had my son, who's now 11. But when I had my son, I was still playing shows. I was still playing music while pregnant. And she asked me, like, when are you going to stop? Like, you're going to be a mom. When are you going to stop this? Like, you need to kind of grow up, kind of thing. And I told her, I'm like, I just don't ever see myself not doing it. It's not about something I can outgrow. It's just something that's I'm passionate about. It's who I am. And I still play music now. I still play shows now. I keep that life completely separated from most of my family, especially my mom, because she still doesn't support it. I know she's not about it. So even though I would love her to accept it and come out to a show, I don't think she will.
And when it comes to being interested in, punk music as an Asian American, uh, tell us about how that was like um, when you were younger. Did you feel accepted, or did you feel perhaps kind of isolated from the rest of the scene or people involved in the scene?
What I liked about punk rock and the scene and the atmosphere was they accepted everyone. I mean, like nobody judged you for anything. You know what I mean? You could be yourself, no matter if you were, Asian, black, white, gay, straight, whatever it may be, you were accepted in that scene. And I think that's why I was really drawn to it because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know where I fit in. And everyone fit in there. You know what I mean? They accepted you as you were, and it was like a big family. That's exactly how it felt, like a family.
So I'd like to now move on to some of your band and musical experiences. So Naboo told me that you were the lead guitarist for his previous band. Was this band No Resistance?
Yeah, that's right.
Gotcha. So can you tell us a bit about your role and experience in this band?
So the music scene that we're a part of is pretty tight, the whole punk rock scene. We all know each other. We've all played music together. So I was in another band, Roots of Exile at the time, and No Resistance, they needed another guitarist. I don't know what happened with the last guitarist, but it didn't work out, whatever it may be. So Scott actually reached out to me. He's the lead singer and bass player for No Resistance. And we've been friends. I'm really good friends with his wife. Like we know each other. And he was just like, hey, do you want to play? Like, you want to play with us? And I was like, absolutely. I was a fan of their music for all these years. My other band played shows with No Resistance several times. So I was all about it. And so we got to play a lot of shows. I got to do a lot of fun stuff. We got to travel to Connecticut. We've traveled around Texas playing shows. So it's something that I love that I was able to connect with them that way. And I actually didn't know Naboo really before No Resistance. So no, Naboo is not, I wouldn't say he's like in the punk scene, but he was in that band because he knew Scott and it just worked. Like the group of us, it just worked out well.
Have you ever been a part of a non-punk band?
Mm, I have not. Well, I feel like the band that I'm in now, I mean, you could still categorize it definitely as punk rock, but it's more rock and roll. But no, every band I've ever been in has been punk rock and roll.
Mhm. And can you tell us about some of the pitfalls that you have experienced in, bands, if there are any you've experienced at all, and how
I
they were remedied?
Yeah, good question. I feel like a lot of them, and I don't think any of it was done on purpose, but as a woman, for one, a woman in rock and roll, it's a man's world, 100%. You know what I mean? Most of the shows I've ever played, the entire bill is men. They're all bands with guys, and I'm the only woman. So there's been a few times that band, No Resistance or Roots of Exile were mentioned in articles, they were mentioned on blogs, and they would always say, "Oh, the boys in Roots of Exile, or the guys in No Resistance," and that would bug me, even though it was little. They were always, because the whole scene is very masculine. The whole music scene is very masculine. So the music we played is very masculine. And so maybe they didn't realize there was a girl in the band, but that always bothered me. That one thing, like the guys are playing this show or the boys are doing this. And it sounds little, now that I'm saying it out loud, it sounds a little petty, but if anything, just that, nothing else.
So, as a woman in the scene, do you see yourself as maybe some sort of a role model for other women, perhaps, who are in the scene?
I would hope so. I don't know. And it's funny because I'm like one of the shyest people ever. Like just doing this interview, I was so nervous. Like I'm just naturally a shy person. So when it comes to that, I don't know. And I'm very, modest. I'm very humble. I would hope though that I could be a role model, especially for girls that are lost and they're, young teenagers and they don't know where they fit in the world, and they find my music and somehow maybe I could be their Joan Jett, and inspire them to make music. That would be the biggest honor. And I think that would be really cool.
So, moving on to your current band, um, can you tell us what motivated you to transition to Gone Rogue and how you first found out about the band?
So I have never fronted a band. I've never really sang in a band. No, that's a lie. So the Roots of Exile, I sung maybe a couple songs, but I was never front woman. I was never, center stage. But it was always something I wanted to do. Like I like to sing. People always told me, like, you have a great voice. You should front a band. And so, it happened very organically, and it wasn't, I wasn't really looking for band members. Um, so our drummer, David, I was actually in a band with him called Thug Boots. Thug Boots had broken up. There was no hard feelings there, but the band just kind of dissipated. So, he wasn't doing anything at the time. I was still kind of with No Resistance, but we weren't playing a lot. We all had kids and stuff. Um, and I was just like, I need to play. Like I just miss playing. I miss being creative. I miss, practicing and jamming. So I reached out to David and we were like, well, let's start something. Let's get together. And I think I may have posted on Facebook like, hey, is there like a guitarist that wants to, jam with us? And that's when Andy came into the picture. So Andy is part of the whole punk scene too. I didn't know him well. He was on my friends list, but he was down to do it. So we met up, the three of us, and it started that way. So it was Andy on lead guitar, me on rhythm guitar and vocals, and then David. And it just like we clicked. I swear. Like I feel like they were like my brothers. We got along really well. They respected my ideas. They respected the lyrics that I was coming up with, and I don't know, it was just vibe really well. And then we eventually, found Dave, our bass player, and that's where we are right now. We've only played a couple shows. When we started playing shows is when COVID started, and then we took a long break. So we're just now getting back into it.
When you first started, fronting the band, was there a learning curve?
Definitely. So I can sing and play guitar. It's not something hard for me to do. It's just being in the center of the stage, being the front woman, and being so shy, because I am very naturally shy. People don't think I am, but I am. So that was the scariest thing is, and also getting, having that confidence to share my lyrics. That's a big deal. That's not something I really did before. I didn't put my thoughts and my feelings out there. Um, and then also, I kept, I would second guess myself a lot. I still do it, but I swear my bandmates are really good at encouraging me. They believe in me and it makes me believe in myself. So I guess just that, gaining that confidence, and, just really putting yourself out there, kind of stepping out of your comfort zone. It's still tough for me. Like it's me right now, we're writing songs and it's still kind of hard for me because I'm like, I second guess myself all the time. And I'm like, does it sound stupid? I don't know, like it's just the confidence thing, building that.
Is there a certain way you like to prepare for shows beforehand, especially as the front woman?
I practice a lot while I'm driving. I'll listen to our music. I practice obviously on the guitar a lot. Um, I've been getting into just meditating, breathing, especially before a show, just calming myself down, and just going over the lyrics and practicing as much as I can.
So with regards to your current band, Gone Rogue,
Mhm.
you mentioned earlier that it's punk rock, but it can also be described as, rock and roll. So I guess could you touch upon some of the influences that your band draws upon?
So like what bands?
Yeah, bands or I guess, genres, sounds,
Okay.
that sort of thing. Mhm.
So it definitely still has the punk feel. Like everyone in the band comes from a punk rock background. So lots of still punk rock influence. But like I said, more rock and roll based. It's more, like I don't even want to say certain bands. It's a different feel. It's definitely more what I've always been into. I've always been in a rock and roll, and I think that stems from loving Joan Jett. Like that was the kind of music that I always wanted to play, like just that heavy in your face music. And with punk rock, a lot of it, it's not that I outgrew it, but my views changed as I got older, you know what I mean? So I felt like the shift and kind of changing more rock and roll and sticking to that more in that direction is just more who I am now. And also with the influence, what's cool about it is the guys in the band, like I said, they come from a punk rock background, but they also like the same music I like. Their influences are the same, so we kind of just, I don't even know how to explain what we sound like. I don't know if you've listened to our music yet, but to me, it sounds more rock and roll than punk rock, you know, that's what I'm going for at least.
Yes, I have listened to your band songs. I will say it does sound, a lot rock and roll.
Mhm.
Um, Still punk though, I would say, like still
Yeah.
lots of elements of punk. The lyrics are rowdy,
Yeah.
energetic, charged. Um, so,
Yeah.
on that topic, I guess, could you tell us more about, the themes and content your lyrics deal with, and also kind of where you draw inspiration from?
Okay.
Mhm.
So really, like all the songs that I wrote were just things that either I were feeling at the time. So there's a song called Fight Night. It's very, it's an angry song. I don't know if you've listened to that one, but it's just, at that time when I wrote that song, it was just stemming from stuff that was happening in my personal life. And then we have a song called TS, which is about Texas. TS is like Texas scenes, punk scene, whatever, hardcore scene, oi scene. Um, and I just wrote it because the music scene in Texas, in Houston, but Texas entirely, like the punk rock music scene is so tight knit. I swear, like it's just everyone knows each other, everyone's very supportive of each other, you know, all the bands know each other. We've all played shows together. So that song was written about that. So just how tight knit we are as a community, how we're very proud to be from Texas. And so the songs that I write, I mean, the lyrics I write are just things I feel. And that sounds kind of cheesy too, but just what I'm feeling in the moment and what inspires me and just, what I love.
I checked your Bandcamp. And it seems that the latest release was in 2019. I assume maybe that's due to kind of the break you guys had. But are you guys currently recording or planning to record any new music?
Very good question. Absolutely. So we have a lot of songs that you haven't even seen the light of day yet. A ton of songs, and right now we're still working on writing, but we do have, we have a show. We're playing our first show in well, almost 2 years now. This next weekend, actually. And then after that, we're going to focus on writing and getting back in the studio for sure. So we'll be recording sometime this year, definitely.
And are you guys self-released or signed to a label?
Right now, we're self-release. Everything we've done is DIY, do it yourself. David, our drummer, is a graphic designer. He designed the album cover, all that. So everything we're doing is still very punk rock, very much do it yourself.
Absolutely. And can you shed some light on what occurred during the break? Were you still doing anything musical, like a self project perhaps?
I was still playing music. During the pandemic, I bought a ukulele. I started playing that. I started, kind of writing songs just for myself, learning covers. Um, that was a really tough time for musicians. And not being able to go out to shows, play shows, get together for band practice for musicians, that was like torture. And I know that sounds dramatic, but it was like not being able to express ourselves that way. But we were still in contact. We were still kind of, all jamming on our own, kind of writing and doing our own thing. We've kept in touch the whole time, until we got back together. But we've all continued definitely just to keep playing, even if it was on our own.
So you informed me before the interview of a song called Our Time that you would like to share. So tell me about why you chose to share this song specifically, and maybe you can tell us kind of the story behind the song.
So this is actually probably my favorite song on that record, because it's called Our Time and it's about us doing what we love, playing music, playing shows, going out, hanging with our friends and having them in the crowd. Um, I wrote that song because I mean it's our life. For musicians that have played music for as long as all of us have or longer, it's your life. It's a part of who you are, no matter what. Even if you take a long break, you're a musician forever. It's a passion that doesn't go away. And that's what that song was about. It was just about us getting together, doing it for fun. I mentioned something in the song about how, we're broke, but we're going to do it anyways. We don't get paid a lot if we do get paid at all. So, it's not something we do for money. It's not something we do, for fame. It's just something we do because we love it. And that's what that's about.
Has the song fostered any interesting or meaningful interactions or reactions from the people who listen to it?
I feel like that's the people's favorite. Like a lot of my friends that go to the shows or that have been following my bands that I've been in before, they're like, that song, like that's the song. It's a good song and it's a rock and roll song. I feel like that's our most rock and roll song on that album. And it's just because I think it's a fun song. It's a song about having a good time, and it's really the kind of music, and that's why I chose to share that song specifically. It's just the type of music that I am trying to, put out there, that happy, good time music, rock and roll music.
So now I'd like to move on to some more questions. We briefly touched upon this earlier, but your Asian identity in relation to music. And so some punk bands infuse cultural elements into their music. Think like Celtic punk. I know black metal bands that incorporate, Hindu gods into their lyrics. So as a Filipina, has infusing your cultural heritage into your songwriting ever been a thought?
I actually have a song. So none of the songs on that album I mention anything, but there is a song that I am writing about, um, my background, you know who I am. I'm very proud to be a Filipino American. I have several Filipino Asian inspired tattoos. Like it's a big part of who I am. Like, and I'm very proud of what my family has accomplished, you know, by coming here. And so I do have a song that I'm writing about that. And it's a really it's a very personal song, and it's a song that I want to work on and make sure it's, you know, finished and it's what I want before I put it out there. But I do have something in the works, so I'm glad you asked.
So why did it take, I guess, have you thought about producing a song like that in the past, or did you kind of decide on it after years of contemplation?
The thing is, you know, even though I'm very proud of who I am, and I'm sure you understand this as well as an Asian American, you know, first generation born here, the way I went in life, what I'm doing, you know, in the music scene, being heavily tattooed and just being who I am, it's not accepted very well by my family. I kind of feel like I am the black sheep of the family. So it's not something I feel like I almost kept that separated, you know, being Filipino and being into punk rock because those two things just didn't mesh well naturally. And I'm sure you understand that also. I'm sure you have your, you know, your parents are, you know, the same way. It's just the culture thing, you know, it's they wanted me to be, you know, a doctor, a nurse, you know, no tattoos, dressed normal in their eyes. So it was something I never put together until now because I feel like, you know, at 34 now, I don't, it's not that I don't care. It's just, I'm going to do what makes me happy. I'm going to write about what makes me happy. I'm going to be who I am, whether they accept it or not.
Have you faced any hardships or incidents in the scene due to your race?
You know what? I have not once. And I think that's why, like I mentioned before, is why I love the scene so much. It's it's very accepting of everyone. So I'm thankful to say that that's never been an issue, not once.
And when you think of yourself, do you think of yourself as a Filipino punk musician, an Asian punk musician, or do you think this sort of classification doesn't matter at all?
I don't think it matters. I mean, I don't think it should matter. I am, you know, I'm a Filipino, I'm an Asian woman guitarist, musician, and I don't know. That's a tough question. You know, I don't think it's been an issue or it's not something that's ever been an issue at all, you know?
So in society today, it still seems that, uh, when it comes to minority groups, um, people usually stick with individuals that are in their minority group. So you'll see a lot of Asian kids hang out with other Asian kids. So were you like that? Did you have a lot of Asian friends growing up? And if so, what were their thoughts on your musical interests?
I had quite a few Asian friends, and we weren't into the same things. A lot of them were like my parents' friends' kids, other Filipino kids, and they were, I mean, I was always, like I said, I always felt like I stuck out, you know, being the only punk rock, you know, girl around. So I mean, I don't think they were unaccepting. It wasn't anything awkward at all, but I definitely was the different one. Um, it's funny because there's actually a picture of all of my cousins, my girl cousins. We had a family reunion. There's like 20, 30 of us, and everyone's beautiful, very long haired. You know, they're very, you know, the typical beautiful Asian girl. And at that time, I had shaved my head, so I was bald. So I'm standing there, you know, with all my beautiful cousins, and I'm bald. And that's just that picture makes me laugh because it's just who I am. Like you can see that I'm the black sheep of the family. I'm the oddball out. It's always been that way. But they've always, you know, my cousins have always accepted me for who I am.
So there was or still is a pretty big punk scene in the Philippines. Um, do you, I guess, are you involved with that, or do you kind of listen to artists in that scene at all?
You know what's funny is one of my very best friends, her name is Ruby. She moved to this country, oh God, 2005, 2006. And so she was into the punk scene there. And so when she moved to Houston, when we met, she was telling me about how big the scene was over there. And I was shocked. I had no idea. There is a ginormous punk rock scene in the Philippines, like tons of bands, tons of punk rockers. They have shows and all this stuff. She was actually in a band out there too. And I was just in awe. I really was. So I have listened to a lot of bands from the Philippines that she shared with me. She shared, her band with me, which was really neat. And I actually lived in the Philippines when I was younger, when I was about 10, but I haven't been back since. But when I do go back, I'm like, I'm gonna hit up a punk rock show. I want to see what it's like over there. But yeah, I was very shocked to know there was a scene out there at all.
What was living in the Philippines like for when you were 10 or for that short period of time?
So I was there about a little less than a year. So we lived in Baguio City, Philippines. At the time, my stepdad, his job moved us there. Culture shock for sure, like ginormous culture shock. I came from middle class family where we weren't wealthy, we weren't poor, middle class family here. But moving to the Philippines, I mean, people thought we were rich. We were considered a rich family. I remember going to the market and their children, my age, even younger, they were, selling things and begging for money. And it was just really shocking and humbling to see as a child. And that is something that has stuck with me for my whole life is being very grateful that my family made the sacrifices to come to this country because you know, where they came from, they were poor. My family was poor and on my dad's side. And so just to see it was very, very shocking. And that's, another reason why I want to go back one day with my own children so they can see what it's like, so they can be more appreciative of what we have here, what our family has built here.
Are your children interested in punk music at all?
So the my daughter, she likes everything that I like. Some of the music, obviously, I can't play for her. There's some bands that are not child friendly, but she likes like the Ramones, the Clash, bands like that are, G-rated. So she's definitely into that. My son, I feel like he's slowly getting into his own style of music. He's actually not really into it as much as my daughter. But my daughter, like, she wants to learn how to play guitar. She wants to, start a band one day. So hopefully, maybe one day I always tell her she's going to be in my old lady band. She'll be my guitarist.
Now I'd like to move on to some of your perspectives on current topics and issues. And the first question I have is, you know, especially now, there's been a rise in anti-Asian sentiment. And so, punk music it can be very politically charged and involved with social change. So with this in mind, what do you think punk musicians can do to fight back this sentiment?
And I mean, the whole punk rock scene that I'm a part of, they're all very, it's an anti-racist thing too. I don't know if you know that, but I mean, being anti-racist is what is a big part of punk rock. It's like I said before, it's about accepting everyone. So there are lots of bands that they do have songs that talk about that. They talk about doing violent things to racists or you know taking out the racists and standing up to the racists. So I feel like what they're doing now is putting those words out there, sharing that music with a younger generation, and just doing that and keeping that part of the whole scene, keeping the scene welcome to everyone. And that's just how they just keep it going from generation to generation.
It seems like people who are into heavier music, punk, hardcore, metal, have different opinions about, mainstream music. They like it, they hate it, or maybe they're indifferent about it. What are your perspectives on modern day pop, rap, hip hop?
I like every type of music. Like I don't just stick to punk rock, rock and roll. I like rap, hip hop. I love country. Like I listen to Taylor Swift with my daughter. Like I'm all about all of it. To me, like music is music. If it's good, like I like it. And another thing I've always said is even if I don't like the musician or a band, if I hate their music, I'm not about it, I'm going to respect them because they're a musician. They're putting their music out there, and that's respectful to me. But I'm all about it. I like every type, every genre.
And tell me um, more about how the punk scene in Houston is unique or different from other punk scenes that you know about or have been a part of. I know you mentioned it's like very tight knit, but you can elaborate more on that.
So I mean, I really am not familiar with how it's like in other cities, but I do know, like I said before here, it is a huge family, like the Houston scene. If someone's going through something, or if we had a couple people pass away this year, and people really rally together and do everything they can to help, and that just help the families of whoever passed away, or GoFundMe's, benefit shows. We've done a lot of those over the years. A couple of my best friends had cancer. We had a big show and raised a bunch of money. Like it always, I don't know, it makes me emotional sometimes because it's like I said, it's like a family. Everyone has each other's back. Like no matter what, if something goes wrong or if someone's going through a hard time, everyone always rallies together to help. Um, and it's just always been that way. Like even today, a lot of us are older, a lot of us don't go out as much as we used to. Like we don't really see each other as much. We're all parents, full-time jobs, but everyone's still got each other's back no matter what. And that's just not something I mean, I don't want to speak for other cities. It's just something special that I know we have here in Houston. It's an amazing, amazing music scene with a bunch of amazing people.
Being in the scene for many years now, have you seen any shifts in the scene with regards to who gets involved? For example, are there more Asians involved now, or how's that changed over time?
You know what? Asians are very much the minority in the punk rock scene. There's not many of us, honestly. There's a few of us. I can probably count us on one hand how many Asians are in the punk rock scene in Houston alone. Um, and I think that's because of our cultural background, our parents being really strict and pushing us to be, cookie cutter, go to college, be normal. So I feel like that's why maybe there's not as many Asians in the punk rock scene because of the cultural thing. Um, but it's definitely diverse, but I will say that Asians are the minority, 100%.
Do you have any perspectives then on the future of Asians or Asian Americans in punk?
Say that again one more time.
Uh, do you have any perspectives then on the future of Asians or Asian Americans in punk?
I would hope more Asians got into the punk rock scene. Like in the Philippines, there's such a huge scene there, and I don't know what it is about just not there not being as so many of us. I would hope more people would get into it. There are a couple Asian musicians in Houston that are awesome. Like it's just, I don't know. I don't know what it is. That's a hard question to answer. I would hope more people or more Asians would, get involved for sure.
So, kind of going full circle here, you mentioned initially that you were inspired by Joan Jett at the age of 13. Um, so now that 20 years have passed, what do you think from then until now is, I guess, your biggest accomplishment or what you're most proud of?
I think I'm most proud of honestly what I'm doing right now in my current band. Um, because it took me a lot to really just do it. It's something I've always wanted to do, but like I said, my influence was Joan Jett 20 years ago. She was the front woman of a band. She's like exudes all this confidence, but I had never done it. I had never done that myself. All these years I've been playing music till recently. So I feel like what I'm doing right now writing my own lyrics, and putting my music and my feelings out there right now, and pushing myself and making myself step out of my comfort zone. I would say I'm the proudest of myself right now as a musician, because I really didn't think I could do it, and I'm doing it, and people are digging it, and it's really cool. It's cool to see.
So as someone who, is doing it now, just going for it,
Mhm.
what is your biggest piece of advice for an aspiring punk musician who's maybe struggling with that, or is maybe thinks they're too shy, or they're scared of, realizing their full potential?
Just go for it. Like, just do it. Like, even though it's scary, no matter what, if you feel that passion and that fire in your heart, like I do, just do it. Just do it no matter what, because who cares what people think if they don't like it? Who cares, if your parents don't like it, whatever it may be, it's what you're passionate about, it's who you are. Just do it because you love it, for no other reason but that you love it.
So at this point, I would just like to ask, before we wrap up, if there's anything else you would like to share, that perhaps maybe I haven't covered, or maybe a message you would like to provide, anything of that sort.
Hmm, that's tough. I'm not good on the spot, Kevin. Like I told you, I'm very shy. I don't know. Um, I'm not sure. I guess pretty much what I just said now, what to other people, or even girls, Asian girls that are out there that are wanting to,
Mhm.
or if you're into punk rock, or they're wanting to get into the scene, just know that you have a support system, that there are people like you that, maybe it wasn't accepted by your family. Maybe you are the black sheep of your family too, but get into the scene, play shows, meet the people, like you'll build your own family there. You'll have a family there.
All right, thank you so much for sharing, and I'd like to thank you so much again for being willing to, take the time out of your day to share all of your amazing experiences, and just everything you've gone through as a musician in the scene.
I really appreciate your time, Kevin. I'm super honored. I probably babbled a little bit because I was nervous, but I appreciate you. And like I said, I'm just super honored to be a part of this. Really am. Thank you.